Tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
It felt like a slap in the face.
Terminated during BC's healthcare racism probe. Why were 4 Indigenous health and wellness workers suddenly let go? A CBC News exclusive. Also,
I just couldn't sit back and do nothing anymore.
Fed up with the handling of COVID in the classroom, parents join a growing chorus of teachers calling for ramped-up pandemic protocols in schools.
And dramatic rescue. 2 crew members of a container ship are seriously injured after a bizarre accident in English Bay.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us tonight. CBC News has learned of some troubling fallout in the wake of the racism probe into BC's healthcare system.
Several Indigenous health and wellness workers are upset their jobs were cut during the months-long review. 4 employees who worked on cultural safety, mainly at St. Paul's Hospital, were let go a few weeks ago.
In this CBC News exclusive, our Angela Starrett is finding out it happened as former child care advocate Mary Ellen Turpel-Lafond conducted her sweeping investigation.
Rose McDonald sings, praying for the patients she once worked with at St. Paul's Hospital. She can't be with them today because her job as an Indigenous health and wellness worker was terminated.
It felt like a slap in the face, not just for me and my colleagues or what I'm feeling about my colleagues, but also just for the patients at St. Paul's and any other Indigenous person working in there.
On November 12th, she was told her unionized position no longer existed. 4 days later, 5 new non-union Indigenous liaison positions were posted that require a Bachelor of Social Work. Providence Healthcare, which runs St. Paul's, says it was restructuring in response to Mary Ellen Turpel-Lafond's report addressing racism. McDonald disagrees.
It was extremely colonial, with a colonial agenda. It didn't feel like there was, an Indigenous aspect to it. To me, it felt like slapping an Indigenous mask on a colonial idea and calling it an Indigenous idea.
3 other Indigenous women also lost the same unionized jobs.
I was actually quite shocked because the way I'd heard it was from community, from patients that were accessing the services, and I grew relationships with some of the patients that are currently in St. Paul's.
She worries the new positions don't take into account the spiritual and world views of Indigenous people. Health Minister Adrian Dix told CBC News that he was unaware of this decision until CBC ran the story, and he's not the only one.
I was never briefed that that was happening for that reason, and one would expect at least to explained a plan to be presented to me and explained to me. And then certainly just in observing this, I'm not very impressed by the way it's been handled in terms of the treatment of people.
The hospital employees union told the CBC it found the termination confusing and is fighting for the women to keep their jobs. Angela Starrett, CBC News, Vancouver.
Today's COVID-19 update yet again brings more tragedy. Another 16 people have died in the past 24 hours, bringing the province's death toll now to 457. Hospitalizations continue to hit record highs, with 336 people now in care. 76 of them are in ICU. There are nearly 8,800 active cases of the coronavirus right now in BC. The number of people under active public health monitoring is roughly the same as yesterday, sitting at just over 1,100. 656 people tested positive for the virus since yesterday. 62% of those cases are in the Fraser Health region.
Some parents in Fraser Valley school districts are still unsatisfied with how health authorities are dealing with rising COVID cases. They want mandatory masks, smaller class sizes, and more online learning. As our Eva Yuguen-Send reports now, health experts say it's impossible to keep everyone happy.
And while the kids aren't exhibiting symptoms, all of a sudden parents are. all of a sudden grandparents are. And that's where the big community spread is coming from.
Despite months of reassurance from health authorities, some parents want more action in schools.
If we take all three of those safety measures, the masks in the classroom, the distance learning options, and the smaller class sizes to be able to properly socially distance, it makes it safer for everyone across the board.
Concerned parents organized a sick-out event today, asking parents to keep their kids home from schools. But their worries aren't shared by all parents.
I think we all know that the risk of the children getting it is quite low, or at least having any severe impacts if they were to catch something. I think the death rate is actually zero here in BC for children.
The parent voices are very important to ensure that what's happening in their school community meets the needs of parents and children, but you just want to reflect on this. We've had very little transmission in schools.
The BC Teachers Federation also worries measures aren't going far enough and wants the mask measures that are encouraged now mandated.
We would like to see in both middle school and secondary schools masks being worn in classrooms as well. And we'd also like to see in elementary schools masks being worn by children 10 years old and older.
I don't think that it's really good for them. I think it's also can take away from their self-identity. My twins, for example, have autism and they're still learning social cues.
This public health expert says it's impossible to satisfy everyone.
Some people think we're going too far and some people think we haven't gone far enough. But really you have to follow the science and do what's best for the population overall.
The Ministry of Education says it is listening to parents and teachers' concerns. It says despite rising cases in the Vancouver coastal and Fraser Health regions, the data continues to show low rates of transmission from children and in schools. Eva Yuguen-Senge, CBC News, Vancouver.
When COVID-19 first hit BC, our province was praised for its handling of the pandemic. But in recent months, the situation has gone south.
BC is seeing some of Canada's highest per capita daily death tolls. Briar Stewart shows us why.
Outside of the Tabor Care Home, a show of support for those inside, from care home workers who've been through their own deadly outbreaks.
We know what they're going through. We know how hard they're working and how exhausted they are.
147 residents and staff have tested positive for COVID at this home. 19 of those living here have died. It's the largest outbreak in the province, but far from the only one. There are outbreaks in nearly 60 care facilities in BC, including the home where Lynanne Beck's mom lives.
That was her 100th birthday party last May.
She hasn't been able to see her since the beginning of October.
I don't really know who brought the COVID into even the place where my mother is. Like, was it the staff or was it the resident? Because who's doing the tracking? And we're never told that.
As the outbreaks grow, there's frustration from families who believe their visit should be deemed essential.
My mom has lost 20 pounds and she's lost her mobility because they simply say they do not have the time or the staff to help her use her walker. If that's not essential, I don't know what is.
Brenda Howard also wants to see more testing of staff, but health officials have said they aren't sure how helpful that would be.
I don't see why, if it's good enough for the NHL, it's not good enough for us to have rapid testing. Test our staff.
The province has committed to hiring thousands of more care workers, but right now, many are facing burnout.
Because we've confined workers to single sites earlier in the spring in BC, that means our casual lists are drying up and we can't get the backup we need to help care for these seniors.
Officials say the real problem is that the virus is spreading so widely in the community that it's bound to make its way into care homes and infect some of the most vulnerable. Briar Stewart, CBC News, Vancouver.
Homicide detectives are starting to put the pieces together in the death of an 18-year-old woman in Burnaby.
Police were called to the Burnaby Heights neighborhood early Sunday afternoon, and that's where we find our Mira Baines now. She's live for us tonight. So Mira, what do we know about what happened there?
Well, police say they seem to know what happened here on Sunday. They found an 18-year-old woman seriously injured inside this home. I'm standing outside it. It's on Oxford Street in North Burnaby, and we're seeing homicide investigators going into and outside of the house tonight. They say the woman was taken to hospital after she was found injured, and she died very recently. And so the Integrated Homicide Investigation team has taken over the investigation. They questioned a man. He was taken into custody, but no charges were laid. Now, Sergeant Frank Jang with the Integrated Homicide Investigation team spoke to reporters earlier today, and he said that they don't believe that this incident was drug or gang related.
We have a fairly good idea of what happened. We believe we've spoken with everyone that was involved. Again, this was an incident we believe that everyone involved, including our young victim and the man that was taken into custody. These are all people that knew one another. So we have spoken with everybody in that home.
Police believe that this incident was an isolated incident with no risk to the public. And they say that they did speak to everyone who was inside the home on Sunday, but they say there might have been somebody here who may have left before police arrived. And so they're hoping to speak to more witnesses and try to get more information about what happened here.
All right, Mira, thanks very much. Mira Baines live in Burnaby tonight. A man has been seriously injured after a bizarre crash at BC Ferry's Tsawwassen terminal. It happened about 12:30 this afternoon. BC Ferry says the last vehicle unloading off the upper car deck smashed through a concrete wall, plunging 9 meters, about 30 feet. The driver was taken to hospital in critical condition. No one else was injured.
And now to a bizarre incident in the waters off Kitsilano. 2 people have been taken to the hospital in serious but stable condition after a distress call was made from a container ship that was anchored in English Bay. This bulk carrier was conducting a drill near Vanier Park around 1:15 this afternoon. The Coast Guard says 2 crew members on that ship were aboard a lifeboat when it suddenly released. The lifeboat then started to sink and the crew members ended up in the water. Paramedics and other emergency crews were dispatched to the scene. The 2 were treated for significant injuries. Vancouver police say WorkSafe BC is now investigating.
Vancouver police say 1 man is dead after a fire on Kingsway east of Victoria Drive. Last night, officers were driving by when they noticed smoke billowing from a commercial building. 2 men were found on the 2nd floor. 1 was taken to hospital. The other man was pronounced dead at the scene. Investigators looking into the cause say the fire was started by smoking.
Well, that smoking is the #1 cause of fire fatalities, and reiterate the importance of having working smoke alarms. Code requires at least 1 per dwelling, but it's ideal to have at least 1 on every floor and ideally 1 outside of every bedroom.
Fire officials say the fire broke out in an illegal suite and it lacked both smoke alarms and sprinklers. This is the 3rd person to die in a fire in Vancouver this year.
Charges have been laid against 3 men in connection with the 2017 shooting death of 24-year-old Alexander Blenarou in Abbotsford.
Now we know that the incident was a targeted hit and that it was related to drugs.
The victim was out on bail when he was shot to death. Islam Nagem and Edric Raju are both charged with first-degree murder, while Michael Schweiger is charged with second-degree murder. The suspects are all known to police. The 3 men arrested remain in custody.
Coquitlam Search and Rescue will soon be adding a few e-bikes to its fleet of rescue vehicles.
This will enable us to quickly search trails and backcountry areas and get to subjects more quickly than we would on foot. And they're also a lot slimmer, so we can fit in smaller trails than, like, for example, our UTV or our 4x4 trucks.
The Port Moody Foundation gave SAR volunteers a check this morning worth $8,200, and that money will be put toward the purchase of 4 e-bikes. SAR volunteers say they are seeing an upward trend in people heading out into the backcountry this year. The e-bikes will allow rescuers to reach people more quickly should they need help. Well, the province has announced new support for local farmers. A new pilot program is being launched to help make it easier for farmers to get their operations up and running.
This will allow these farmers to improve the quality of their crops and production capacity, as well as increase value-added activities and market access, making sure BC food is getting to BC customers.
The Small Farm Business Acceleration Pilot Program will offer farmers up to $800,000 to develop their business plan. It'll also help fund the infrastructure and equipment they'll need to improve productivity. The goal is to improve food security in BC and build a stronger economy following COVID-19.
Well, meanwhile, Sikh youth of Victoria rolled a convoy in front of the BC legislature today in a show of solidarity with farmers in India. Local politicians have also been speaking out against a violent crackdown on farmers protesting in India. They've been attacked by water cannons while protesting government changes to farming laws. The organizers of the vehicular protest say new regulations in India threaten the livelihood of smallhold farmers. The Indian government says the reforms are needed to boost production.
Well, today marks 2 years since Meng Wanzhou was arrested by police at Vancouver International Airport. Huawei's CFO is fighting extradition to face fraud charges in the United States. She is expected to be back in court next spring. Later this hour, we're going to hear from our Jason Proctor, who started covering this story from the day it broke, and bring you the latest on what's happening and why the case has garnered so much international attention.
A team of scientists at UBC say tall buildings across the Metro Vancouver region will shake much more than currently predicted with the big one when it hits. Our meteorologist Johanna Wagstaffe has been following this very closely. So, Jo, what more can you tell us about this?
Yeah, Tanya and Mike, I actually just got off my Zoom call with the lead author, Carlos Molina-Hutt from UBC. Fascinating research. So him and his team ran multiple simulations of the Cascadia subduction zone earthquake, the big one that we're expecting here, and found that shaking was much more amplified than the Canadian seismic hazard model indicates. So I want to show you the main points here on a board, starting with the fact that they used the fact that Metro Vancouver sits on what's known as the Georgia Sedimentary Basin. And this is not taken into account when we talk about our Canadian National Seismic Code. This also looked at 3,000 concrete shear buildings across Metro Vancouver. These were the types of buildings that were mainly affected by this amplified shaking. So that was the big takeaway here, that by including this sedimentary basin that most models don't include, they found that these older concrete, taller buildings in Metro Vancouver, of which we have 3,000 of them, were more damaged or shook more than our current models show. Here's a map of that extra shaking. You can see the areas on the left in red. Those are the more amplified waves that you would get when you include the sedimentary basin. And, you know, for those of you who pay a lot of attention to our seismic hazard risks on the West Coast, as we should, this is different than liquefaction. That's just looking at the top 30 meters of sediment. That's when we get that extra shaking. This is looking at sort of the first 4 kilometers, so much deeper. You're looking at pictures of megathrust earthquake in Japan. Of course, we know that the big one is expected here. New research shows there's about 14% chance of that megathrust earthquake in the next 50 years. So this research is really the tip of the iceberg. Carlos was saying that everyone's working together. Now this information can be honed and included not only on retrofitting some of our buildings, but on future building codes, and also helping to identify what areas might be more damaged after an earthquake. So rather than try and find exactly where you live and, you know, see if you're in that sedimentary basin, I think the big takeaway is here we have more information, and that can help us moving forward. So I'll keep you posted on this study, and of course, I've got the clear and sunny forecast as well. I won't forget that.
No, don't forget that. We'll look forward to it. Thanks, Joe.
You're welcome.
Okay, we are getting our first peek at what the new Broadway subway extension could look like. The Broadway Subway Project Corporation has just released draft renderings of the future stations. It's part of the public consultation process. We were hoping to show you those renderings. We can tell you the first phase of the extension runs 5.7 kilometers along the Millennium SkyTrain line from VCC Clark to Broadway and Arbutus. Construction is scheduled to begin in 2021. The line is expected to open for service in 2025.
There they are.
There they are.
Another reason to go to our website to see them all. The lights have come up on Canuck Place as it celebrates 25 years of being there for families in dark times. The lighting of the house is an annual tradition at Canuck Place Children's Hospice. In 1995, the first of two facilities opened in a 16,000 square foot mansion in Vancouver. Later, a second location opened in Abbotsford. That was in 2009. At both homes, a clinical team provides therapy, end-of-life care, and grief counseling at no cost to families.
Looks very nice. Okay, just a quick reminder, you can also watch this newscast live on CBC Gem.
CBC Vancouver is also on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram.
Horrific air pollution in India's capital city is making the pandemic situation that much worse. We take you to Delhi right after the break.
Well, thanks for staying with us during our commercial-free live stream. There's some exciting news for Canadian curling fans.
Yeah, some of the sport's biggest events will be hosted in Calgary next year as Curling Canada looks to create a safe bubble for players amid the pandemic. The CBC's Devin Haru has details.
Calgary is about to become a curling mecca in 2021. Curling Canada making official what CBC Sports reported weeks ago, that the Scotties, the Brier, the Men's World Championship, two Grand Slam of curling events, as well as the Mixed Doubles National Championship will all be housed under one roof at the Mark and McPhail Centre at Canada Olympic Park. Now, at this point, there is no set timeline as to when these events will take place. Curling Canada officials saying that they are still in conversations with officials from the Public Health Agency of Canada to determine all safety precautions and restrictions inside the bubble. Of course, Curling Canada following the footsteps of a lot of professional leagues, including the NHL and the NBA, who had bubble-like scenarios to much success. So Curling Canada says that these events are so crucial to be played because these championships will determine what teams will qualify for those trials. Of course, the 2022 Olympics are looming large, and you need those national champions to book spots into the Roar of the Rings, which will be hosted in Saskatoon next November into December. This is also somewhat historic. Never before have the Scotties and the Brier been played at the same time in the same city. Devin Haru for CBC Sports.
A lunar probe launched by China has landed on the moon. The mission blasted off a week ago. Chinese state media say the robotic lander has now touched down just as of today. It's supposed to collect about 2 kilos of rocks and then return them to Earth.
The European Space Agency is helping monitor this mission. If it's successful, it'll be the first time since 1976 that samples have been brought back from the moon. China hopes to eventually send people to the moon.
Reminds me of the Dumb and Dumber moment where he goes, "We've landed on the moon." And yes, he's several decades late on realizing that. Yeah.
There you go.
We'll be back in a few moments with more COVID-19 news from right across the country.
We were looking forward to seeing you at our open house, but things are different this year. Last year, we raised more than $1 million for local food banks across BC. We're not going to let 2020 stop us.
It's great to see you.
Especially at a time when the food banks need support the most.
I'm so glad you asked.
Join us online and on Radio 1 for CBC British Columbia's Food Bank Day on December 4th.
To national news now, and the Prime Minister is calling the federal plan to inject $100 billion into the post-pandemic economy historic and appropriate. But a day after revealing that plan also projects a $381 billion deficit, Justin Trudeau is facing pushback from the opposition for spending too much. At the same time, he's hearing from provinces that say Ottawa isn't offering enough. David Cochran reports.
The focus right now is on getting ready for the vaccine, but Ontario's health minister is also focused on getting more healthcare money from Ottawa.
We were somewhat disappointed, yes, because we know that we need an increase in the transfer.
The plan rolled out yesterday had billions in new spending, but not the extra $28 billion a year the provinces want for health.
We're going to be talking about all that as we meet next week.
Next week is when the Prime Minister meets with the premiers to discuss this. But for today, after projecting the biggest deficit since the Second World War, Trudeau was rebutting criticism he isn't spending enough.
8 of every $10 spent in Canada to fight COVID-19 and support Canadians has been spent by the federal government.
And while the provinces demand even more, the opposition claims much of what has been spent has been wasted.
So with the biggest deficit in the G20, the highest costs of all our competitors, we are getting among the worst results.
We all remember what happened when the previous government cut support too quickly following the 2008-2009 recession. That will not be our approach.
Trudeau's approach is to keep spending right through this emergency phase of the pandemic and even more once the virus is under control. That's when Trudeau is promising stimulus of up to $100 billion to jolt the economy back to life. David Cochran, CBC News, Ottawa.
And with potentially multiple vaccines just around the corner, the Prime Minister was asked today who decides who gets the doses first.
The priority is to get it out to the most vulnerable Canadians quickly, but we have a panel of top experts and scientists looking in directly to these challenging ethical and societal questions of who gets the vaccine's access first. We should all agree across the country on what that list looks like and make sure that it is applied fairly right across the country.
The Prime Minister says it won't be politicians, but rather experts who will decide how it's distributed. Health Canada is currently reviewing 4 vaccine candidates for safety and effectiveness, refuting the idea that Canada is at the back of a long line of other nations. Trudeau says we have been guaranteed some of Moderna's first batch once its vaccines are approved here.
Well, meanwhile, federal ministers say they're getting ready as Health Canada reviews potential candidates for COVID-19 vaccines. Health experts say frontline workers and vulnerable Canadians are expected to be among the first inoculated. But ultimately, it'll be up to the provinces and territories to decide. The Public Services and Procurement Minister says Canada has purchased 126 cold and ultra-cold freezers to store the vaccines when they arrive.
Together with existing federal capacity, we can store 33.5 million frozen and ultra-frozen doses of vaccines. It is not possible to circle a single date on the calendar, but I can assure you that as soon as Health Canada approval occurs, our delivery process will kick in, and we will make sure that vaccines are coming early in the new year.
And Johnson & Johnson has submitted its COVID-19 vaccine candidate to Health Canada for approval. It's the 4th potential vaccine to make it that far. Dr. Isaac Bogosh says it's another encouraging step in the fight against the disease.
All of them have exciting data, but of course we're only getting snippets of that data. We don't have publicly released data just yet, and we don't really have much from Johnson & Johnson. Nevertheless, very exciting times that there's 4 vaccines under consideration at Health Canada, and I think Canadians can expect to have vaccine programs roll out hopefully in the very early part of 2021.
Health Canada must approve a vaccine as safe and effective before it can be administered to Canadians. It's evaluating all 4 candidates using a rolling review process that allows companies to submit data from clinical trials even as those trials are still underway.
Well, taking you overseas now, India has reported more than 9 million cases of the coronavirus. With more than 500,000 infections, the pandemic has hit the capital the hardest. But Delhi had been battling another major health issue long before the pandemic ever arrived. That's air pollution. And now, as the CBC's Salima Shivji reports, doctors there are trying to see if the bad air is actually making COVID-19 worse.
Daybreak in Delhi, the city already shrouded in haze, gasping for breath. In the middle of Delhi's dense and insistent traffic, volunteers are pleading for drivers to turn off their engines, if only for a few seconds. And anti-smog water guns have also been let loose. The measures aren't all new. India's capital is used to its pollution high season, but the urgency is.
This is the lung of a teenager.
Dr. Arvind Kumar can't hide his frustration. The chest surgeon says Delhi's steep rise in COVID cases is directly linked to its bad air. The respiratory disease latches onto already damaged lungs.
All of us doctors had been crying hoarse that pollution and mixing of people, this combination will lead to higher incidence.
And yet, while some are taking precautions,
basically I have seen some cases within my family, so it's a panic state for me.
Others are not. As the country hits its wedding season, there are few masks in sight in some neighborhoods.
Officials across India are trying to fight that complacency. Some states imposing night curfews, others using roadblocks and quadrupling the fines if you're caught not wearing a mask.
For those donning full protective gear day in and day out, the work is endless. Intensive care beds are full and Delhi's doctors weary.
When you have to refuse some patients whom you can help, it is distressing.
At one of the city's busiest crematoriums, the rituals are now hurried, the goodbyes hasty. Raj Kumar Gupta's father-in-law spent his last days on a ventilator, the family unable to see him.
A huge loss from COVID. People should be aware of this and take safety measures.
A message the grief-stricken families gathered here are hoping will sink in. Salima Shivji, CBC News, Delhi.
It has been 2 years since Meng Wanzhou was arrested at YVR. So where's the court case at? CBC reporter Jason Proctor has been following it closely. He will join us next.
In the past few days, a new kind of cross-border shopping, with Americans going north for flu shots. And as Chris Brown explains, that's meant brisk business in some Canadian communities.
Americans are climbing on board the Flu Cruise, otherwise known as the Victoria Clipper Catamaran. Its operators have put on extra trips to bring as many as 1,000 people to get their Canadian flu shots.
I couldn't get a flu shot in San Diego, but I was on vacation in Seattle, and we heard that they were giving them in Canada, so we signed up.
It is a cross-border shopping story the U.S. news media can't seem to get enough of. Nor can the private clinics in Canadian border towns, now doing a brisk business selling those shots for up to $50 a needle.
For most of these people, it is life and death. They have chronic problems, COPD, asthma, diabetics who really should be having the flu shot, and they shouldn't have to wait till January.
January is when the U.S. supply of flu vaccine should return to normal. In the meantime, there's been something of a ripple effect here in Canada.
More news means more awareness, which usually translates into more flu shots.
For me, it's just like throwing a dart, okay?
Okay, go. On Parliament Hill, they had the needles out, along with some reassurances that there is still plenty of vaccine for Canadians.
We purchase in bulk for what we think will be the optimal number of doses for Canada.
In stock, but not always available exactly when people want it. In some spots, the unexpected American demand has created supply bottlenecks.
People's anxiety level is definitely heightened. They're seeing Americans coming up and paying for the vaccine, and then they're phoning their family doctor, and they're unable to make an appointment to get their flu shot until a little bit later than they normally would.
The company that makes most of Canada's flu vaccine says it has distributed an additional 500,000 doses to accommodate the extra demand. Still, interest from the U.S. remains strong. Earlier this week, there was even a listing on the internet site eBay selling 20 doses of the Canadian vaccine for up to $200 a shot. Chris Brown, CBC News, Vancouver.
Highway 99 once again took the brunt of the heavy winter downpour as mud and rock clouded the Howe Sound shoreline. The rain, along with mild temperatures melting the heavy snowfall up top, are the ingredients that bring on the slides along this twisting mountain road.
This is a familiar place, the M Creek Bridge, the stretch of Highway 99 plagued by rock and mudslides for the past 2 years.
The slide you just saw hit around 8 o'clock, just north of the M Creek Bridge, at a place along the highway they call Tunnel Point. Highway 99 was closed to traffic right away as crews moved in for the cleanup. There was no picnic in Coquitlam this morning either. This poor man didn't count on bailing his car out to get himself to work.
Here are some of the stories we're following tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
It felt like a slap in the face, not just for me and my colleagues, also just for the patients, at St. Paul's and any other Indigenous person working in there.
4 unionized Indigenous health and wellness workers are terminated from St. Paul's Hospital. It happened during the provincial investigation into racism within BC's healthcare system. All 4 are Indigenous women. Providence Healthcare calls the cuts an expansion of its Indigenous health program. After the women were let go, 5 new Indigenous wellness liaison positions were posted to the Providence website. They're non-unionized. All 5 jobs also require a Bachelor of Social Work to qualify.
Some people think we're going too far, and some people think we haven't gone far enough. But really, you have to follow the science and do what's best for the population overall.
Public health experts say trying to satisfy everybody is a tricky balancing act for officials. It comes as more parents join the increasing calls from teachers for more pandemic protections in schools. Some are still unsatisfied with how health authorities are dealing with rising COVID cases in the classroom.
And 2 people have been rescued from the waters of English Bay after a distress call was made from a container ship. The Coast Guard says 2 crew members on that ship were aboard a lifeboat when it suddenly released. They're now in serious but stable condition.
Well, today marks 2 years since Meng Wanzhou was arrested at Vancouver International Airport. The Huawei executive is currently in court fighting extradition to face fraud charges in the U.S. The CBC's Jason Proctor has been covering this story from day one. We caught up with him earlier today from outside Meng's Vancouver home, where she's under house arrest, and I asked, what's the latest on the extradition proceedings?
Well, so Mike, right now we're sort of in the middle, I guess you would say, of the court proceedings. They're scheduled to take place later next year, so sometime around spring, summer. Everything keeps getting delayed, though, because there have been a lot of proceedings leading up to that. And so, basically it's all spreading out towards next year when we're going to have proceedings around, allegations that Meng Wanzhou's rights were violated, and also sort of centrally whether or not there is enough of a case that the U.S. has presented to warrant her extradition down south.
All right, and in the past month, the court has heard testimony from the CBSA and RCMP officers who arrested Meng at YVR. What information emerged from that testimony?
Yeah, so this has been really interesting. This all circles around the first hours, really, that she was on Canadian soil. What we've heard from the CBSA and the RCMP officers is they say, well, look, they were just kind of following protocol, that the CBSA are the gatekeepers to Canada, and so it would be natural that they would go first and that they had immigration things that they had to do. What the defense is arguing with regards to this in the case they're trying to build is to say, no, this is completely unnatural, and in fact it was all kind of done at the behest of the FBI to mount this investigation that's sort of covert and in complete violation of her rights. And so Those are the kind of dueling narratives. They're gathering evidence right now, and those, all of that evidence will be part of these proceedings that happen later next year, when they will also allege that the case has been politicized, and that even the very kind of underlying bedrock facts of the case provided to Canada are in fact misleading.
All right, Jason, and this case is, as you say, really placed Vancouver and Canada in the middle of a international spotlight. Why do you think there has been so much global interest in this particular case?
I think, Mike, part of it is it sits really at the fulcrum, at the center of so many different issues. You have Huawei, which is the world's largest telecommunications company, and its place in the next, wave of wireless technology. Canada still has to make a decision to see whether or not Huawei will be involved in the grid. You also have this trade war between China and the United States. We're in Shaughnessy here. 2 doors down from us is the home of the U.S. ambassador. There's a U.S. flag flying down here. Huawei is kind of a symbol of China and Chinese power. And you have this woman who was caught here in the very middle of it. And, of course, in Canada, trade has been affected, and most, painfully for many Canadians. There are 2 Canadians, Michael Kovrig and Michael Spavor, who have been detained in China, accused of spying in what most people believe is simple retaliation for Meng Wanzhou's arrest, since 9 days after she was arrested. So all of those kind of things have converged to make this the focus of just tons of attention. It really is hard to overstate the interest outside of BC and all around the world in this case.
Hard to believe it's been going on for 2 years. Jason, thanks very much for this. Jason Proctor, outside Meng Wanzhou's home in Vancouver.
Still ahead, it's not exactly the best time to take a dip into Lake Ontario, but that's not stopping many from taking an icy swim. We'll tell you why they're taking a popsicle plunge coming up.
19 minutes before 7 o'clock, a live look at Revelstoke tonight, and a freight train nicely cooperating with our timing for the live shot tonight. Plenty of snow on the ground there, cold and clear here. So how long will the string of sunshine last? Joe's forecast is next.
Hi, my name is Mithun. I am the owner of SpiceX. We opened just 1 month before the pandemic. It was the bad time to open a restaurant, but the community help was really helpful, and here we are. So always I had an intention to help people, so I find opening up a restaurant helped me a lot in giving back to the community, because always we have the food, then why not give to the people? So every month we had a certain plans, like first month we help the students, and then we help the people who have low income, and the next month we focused on homeless people, and we offer them delivered their meals. By seeing their face, I feel happy, and they promise me, like, once they are in a good stage, they will help back the community, and they will surely come to my restaurant and buy the food. That's what, gives me motivation. So after I launched the restaurant, then my intention was to open the truck. So I was starting the work, and I got all the stuff which is needed for the truck, like propane tanks and stuff like that. I was buying all the stuff which I need to open a food truck. And we were about to move the truck from our workshop to here, and the doors were open, and I seen people trying to break in. I didn't even look inside. I thought everything should be good. After I moved here, I checked the truck, and I came to know they have taken a lot of our propane tanks, and they have taken a heater. They have taken all the electronic stuff which we needed for to operate.
So your truck got robbed?
Yeah, that's right. I feel a bit down because it's all the money I saved from my full-time job to start my business. But again, when you think in this way, this is the time where people are, don't have a job and stuff like that. I don't feel that revenge or angerness. They might be hungry. That might be the reason they have done that.
Has this loss and the financial setback that you suffered affected your policy about giving out free food and helping people with the food in your restaurant?
No, I feel like I should help more because a lot of people do this because they are hungry. They are afraid to ask you for food. So when you are like giving food for hungry people, they will come and get it instead of doing this. So all this robbery and stuff like that can be stopped this way too. That's what my belief is. I find this way by helping. In the future, they can be my support, right? So I choose that the positive way. I believe kindness is our main purpose of human beings, being kind to each other and loving each other.
Market Report is brought to you by Fortis BC. We've got even bigger rebates.
Rebate.
Whoa! On select high-efficiency equipment for business, but only for a limited time.
People in southern Australia are sweltering through another day of record-breaking heat.
Disastrous.
Pretty muggy, very muggy.
It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, can't do much.
It's been a long time since anyone had to deal with that sort of heat, and when it comes and hits you like that, not fun for anyone.
No.
An extreme heat warning is in place for much of the province of Queensland. Temperatures have hit the mid-40s and are expected to last through much of the week. The heat wave has pushed the fire danger rating to very high or even severe in some areas.
A little too toasty down under there, that's for sure. Johanna Wagstaffe joining us now. It's chilly, though, for us here.
Yes, quite fitting that today is the start of meteorological winter. I know we've still got a few days to go for the official winter solstice, but this is when meteorologists really party. December 1st is our day, but of course that means it is also the start of meteorological summer down under. So yeah, getting into the two extremes. Let me take you to the current temperatures right now where, yeah, it is a little on the chilly side, -1 up towards Camel River already with clear skies, allowing any heat we saw today to radiate away. Just a 5 through YVR. I think we're going to get close to the freezing mark once again across Metro Vancouver. The blue skies and the cold temperatures courtesy of this building high pressure ridge in the upper levels of our atmosphere. And that's holding strong for a couple of days. That clockwise flow we get around the high, directing a stream of moisture to the north. And that is bringing some winds once again tonight to central coastal sections and Haida Gwaii. Look for a gusty overnight. Okay, taking you through our forecast overnight tonight, not much to speak of. We could see some patchy fog starting up again tomorrow morning, sort of around 6 or 7. As you can see by mid-morning, things clear out quite nicely. I'm going to run this through to Thursday morning. A dry start to Thursday. In fact, Thursday might actually remain dry, but notice the cloud that sweeps in from the southwest. That's really our only blip in the forecast. Thursday does look like an overcast but dry day as this system moves in. So that high pressure ridge is shifting eastward, actually getting some good gusts in the valleys over the next couple of days. That stream of moisture staying well off to our west, but then this little low pressure system sneaks in and that kind of pushes the cloud into our forecast zone for one day and one day only. But get your cameras ready. It is so rare to see sunny icons in place for most of the province. We are all sharing solidarity in that sunshine. Prince Rupert, you will see the rain move back in, though, Wednesday night. Our story is the sunshine, of course, for most of our long-range forecast. As I take you through the next 5 days, 7 tomorrow for Vancouver, down to a 2 Wednesday night into Thursday. That's when we get that cloud cover moving in. Some of the early models were showing the slight chance of some showers Thursday night into Friday, so I'll keep an eye on that one. Friday, though, that high pressure bounces right back. Looks like things clear out for a mainly sunny Friday and Saturday. Keeping my eye on Sunday because it does look like that high pressure can't hold through to early next week. So showers return on Monday, but I'll watch that timing. As it looks, though, a very sunny and dry long-range forecast. And I did look at some of the totals for Metro Vancouver as we round out November. We came in at 102% of our total rainfall for November, so about average for rainfall in Metro Vancouver for November. Some mild overnights, but about seasonal for our afternoon highs. So good riddance to November as we welcome a sunny start to a meteorological winter.
And just like that, the rain disappears with November and the sun with December. Love it. Well, hopefully it holds out for a while. But thank you so much, Johanna.
You're welcome.
Well, it's certainly not the time of year you think about taking a dip in the lake, especially if you live in Toronto.
But when your local pool is closed because of COVID-19 restrictions, how else do you get your swim time in?
CBC's Greg Ross caught up with a group of former competitive swimmers as they took a trip to Cherry Beach on chilly Lake Ontario.
Feeling pretty cold.
You okay?
It's numb.
Your hands, feet, or face?
Just my face. My head. Still got a brain freeze. You get a bit of an ice cream headache, brain freeze at first, but once you kind of get moving, it's great.
Shall we go?
Yeah.
I can't explain it. I don't know exactly what it is, but there's some kind of change that happens in moods for all of us when we get out.
It is a huge sense of joy that I get out of this, both because of the camaraderie with the other swimmers and the exhilaration of just being in that cold water. We all swam during the summer, and then we just kept saying, oh, you know, it's still okay. Why don't we swim next week too, and next week?
You okay?
I've got my booties on, keep the feet warm. My wetsuit, which is a full triathlon wetsuit. These mitts are very good. And then my headgear with my hoodie, and then underneath it I have a swimming cap as well.
1 Celsius, yeah.
I can't speak, I'm frozen. Amazing. Yeah, it's.
I figure we'll be out for January, February, but we'll be back in the water in March. That's my goal.
Well, how hard is it going to be to get through this winter if you don't have this?
Good question. I don't know. That's why I'm saying it may be the last day. It probably is. Yeah. Never know.
I'll call it a pandemic passion project. Why one couple in Manitoba created a Viking hut in their backyard. That's next.
Right, today we are going to be testing out the new Displaced left. Let's see how this goes. So first up, we're traveling along the bypass from the airport towards Queen Elizabeth Hospital. But we want to head to Surrey. Oh, yep, all these arrows saying turn left. So this is where you're going to come up to a stoplight. This stoplight will allow you to pass over the bypass. You're still not on St. Peter's Road, but you're across the bypass. So here we go, we've got the green light, we're pulling up on through. Again, lots of vehicles all handling this quite well. There's signs to say if you're going the wrong way, but the road has been engineered to make it easier to go the right way. And then you get across one lane, and then you come up into a second lane. So beside me here is all of the traffic on the bypass going straight through, and I still got green lights to cross over St. Peter's Road and on my way to Surrey. I'm coming from the Queen Elizabeth Hospital towards the airport, and there's a clearly marked lane with arrows on the ground. There's a sign that says City Center turn. So I just get into my lane and follow it. And the first thing that happens is you come up to a stop line, and this stop line prevents me from traveling across the bypass and into incoming traffic. The green arrow has indicated that I can now cross across the bypass, and I am in my own individual left turning lane here on St. Peter's Road. And so when the light turns green, which it just has, here I go. That is me doing the displaced left turn here onto St. Peter's, and away I go downtown.
Well, you see, we wrote a letter to Santa and explained our situation and how sad we were that we had to close and how we were for a long time really worried about money. Over the weekend, some members reported that there were some mysterious packages when they showed up in the morning. So we checked our security footage and found out that Santa and Mrs. Claus had paid a visit to us. We have binder at our entranceway where everyone needs to sign in, all family members' names, just for contact tracing purposes, just in case we find ourselves in that situation, and Mrs. Claus signed her and Santa in. So what he brought by was some activity boards that we had installed on the walls of the playground. It's just a little extra something fun for the kids to play with there. And he left a little note saying that there was going to be another special delivery this week. Some of my friends said that their kids watched the video footage 20 times that night. So everyone was super excited, and the kids even noticed that they followed the COVID rules.
Welcome back. Canadian actor Elliot Page has shared that he is transgender. The actor is known for his Oscar-nominated role in Juno, as well as Inception, and most recently, The Umbrella Academy. He addressed his social media followers on Tuesday with a lengthy post in which he shared he is trans and that he prefers to use the pronouns he or they. Page said he was inspired by many in the trans community and thanked them for their courage, generosity, and work to make the world a more inclusive and compassionate place. Page has been one of the most visible queer actors in Hollywood ever since publicly coming out as gay in 2014.
I think it's fair to say many of us have had to change our ideas of fun this year. As for Wendy Speary and Pedro Bedard, their idea of fun involves mud, wood, and a whole lot of grass.
It does sound fun. In their backyard, the couple has built their very own Viking hut, just like it would have been 1,000 years ago. The CBC's Corey Funk went to check it out.
Hi, I'm Wendy Speary. I'm a member of the Hands of Lou Viking Reenactment Society, and this year we built a thatched Viking hut in our backyard.
I'm Pedro Bedard. I'm married to Wendy Speary. I'm also a member of the Hands of Lou Viking Reenactment Society, and I helped build a Viking hut in our backyard.
We've been wanting to do it for a long time. It's just, we've been doing Viking reenactment for years, and it's something that's always been an interest, but who has the time? And normally we go to Island Dingadagarin in Gimli every August, but of course this year it was canceled. And so we wanted to do something, so it just seemed like the perfect time to do it.
We really didn't know much about Viking building techniques. We've been reenacting, but mostly it's building and making personal equipment, clothes, shoes, pouches.
Ironwork.
Things like that, like things for cooking.
We had to do some adaptation, like say like in England they have like a reed straw, which is like the size of your the width of your finger
pinky,
and
yeah.
8 feet long. We don't have that here, so we actually just use the prairie tall grass that grows like around here. And wow, so much grass, more grass than you could possibly imagine. I'm so sick of grass.
We estimate like every row of thatch has about 130 bundles. Each bundle has about 100 individual strands of grass.
And there's 12 rows.
Yeah, and we
so much grass.
12 rows plus the extra that went on top. We estimate there's probably about 175,000 individual blades of grass in this thing.
A big part of it was like giving us something to do. Instead of, because like I own a store, and so of course we're closed now. We were closed in March, and then we had limited hours in between, and it's been really depressing. And I don't want to go into that, but so this way it gave me something to do, and you can see the progression of it, and you can see it getting done.
A lot of it is myth busting. When people hear the word Viking, the first thing they think of is, oh, these savage raiders, these bad dudes, and really, whereas that did happen. The way I describe Vikings are traders. They went all over the place because they love to trade.
We do this as a family. Like we have 2 kids, and they've been doing it like all their lives as well. Like they've kind of known nothing else.
Our daughter Maya, she helped a lot with the thatching. I'd come home from work and they'd be on the deck chatting and tying bundles of thatch together, and so it was good. It was.
And working on the dog, because really it's just a great big mud fight.
Yeah, it's just an excuse to get muddy and dirty.
Whatever it takes, I guess.
Yep.
Shedding some light on Viking history. I want his hat.
I do too. And
you want his hat?
Well, I went to Norway once. I was going to talk about the Vikings hats. We didn't build one of those, but we did build this massive snow fort. But looking at these two, they're in Manitoba.
Yeah.
They were wearing T-shirts. You can
Yes.
see snow. I don't know. I guess they've got some thick skin there.
There you go.
Good for them.
Mm-hmm. Just a quick reminder, you can always watch this newscast online, cbc.ca/BC.
Our next local news is right here at 11 with Dan Burrett, right after the National. Have a good night.
Good night.